The natural response to uncomfortable feelings like fear, stress, and anxiety is to run away from them. They are unpleasant feelings, so why not cast aside your responsibilities to imbibe in the pleasantries life can offer? The more obvious answer is that these difficult emotions remain inside you, bubble up, and present themselves in harmful ways. But if we dig deeper, there are three forms of self-sabotage that can stem from a reluctance to lead your heart and brain. While they might be sustainable, they can lead you down a path of significant hardship. The three forms of self-sabotage occur when 1. You unconsciously outsource your leadership by letting your heart and brain be hijacked. Do you consciously turn to someone else for leadership? 3. Your heart and brain attempt to lead themselves. Unconscious hijack. One of the unintended consequences of modern Western culture is that it obscures and subverts what you actually think and desire because boredom has been cured by curated social media feeds, bombarding advertisements, and tantalizing suggestions from your favorite streaming service. People and algorithms constantly vie for your attention, and they usually win because they are engineered to do just that. Many are unaware of this reality, so their attention goes where the winds of curated algorithms take them. The instant they become bored, they tap into the algorithmic hive mind for a quick distraction from the discomfort brought by boredom. Without boredom, they are without self-reflection. With no time for self-reflection, there is no metacognition, no consideration of their thoughts, values, and desires. When you don't take the time to reflect on your values, thoughts, and desires, they slowly morph into those that you pay attention to. The political ideology, personal values, and narratives you consume from social media, advertisements, Netflix, and your friends become your own. You lose your individuality by internalizing opinions originating from salespeople rather than navigating by your own compass. Your gut is a cybernetic mechanism. Its decisions are dependent on the information it receives. When the heart and brain are influenced against your best interests, the gut makes decisions it wouldn't normally make. Its North Star is subverted, and you orient yourself towards a life you do not truly want. In this situation, an underlying anxiousness exists because your actual thoughts and desires remain under the surface despite a hijack from external values. This hijack is dangerous for two reasons. 1. It largely happens unconsciously. 2. It creates an addictive feedback loop. The hijacking process happens to most people without their knowledge. New thoughts and desires are subverted, and because of the same absence of self-reflection that got them there in the first place, they fail to notice these changes in their thoughts and desires. Secondly, many social media algorithms are created in an addictive manner, so your desires are replaced with a desire to consume more. You become convinced that further consumption is best for you, which explains why so many people enter the rut of continuous consumption of self-help material. Self-help is not necessarily bad because it can stimulate self-reflection, but it becomes a crutch when your desires are replaced with further consumption of self-help. The problem with the consumption feedback loop is it leads to its logical conclusion: you consume your life away. Consumption on its own is not a problem, but a life of consumption addiction is a waste of human potential. No child aspires to read every self-help book, watch every movie, or listen to every podcast, and few adults desire a legacy of consumption. Perhaps viewing every movie in a genre is a means to a film critic's legacy, but the production of critical reviews is what brings the critic true satisfaction, not the consumption of a well-formed movie. Part of what makes us human is the unifying desire to produce something meaningful, whether it be a legacy, a skyscraper, or an artistic body of work. Yet the consumption addict's day-to-day decisions rarely align with this goal. Of course, this misalignment further contributes to the anxiety caused by the unconscious hijacking of our thoughts and desires. The aforediscussed unconscious hijacking is called mimesis. Mimesis works by feeding into the cybernetic mechanism we alluded to previously. Our decisions are governed by the heart, brain, and gut, which are influenced by what we pay attention to. Our attention is drawn to those we view as competitors and inspiration because people tend to be goal-oriented and competitive, as evidenced by our technological progress over time and the ubiquity of professional sports. Since nobody wants to fall behind their competition, and we aspire to reach positions others are in, we tend to imitate these competitive and inspirational mimetic models. If you pay attention, you'll find mimesis everywhere. When your friend in the same socioeconomic status as you gets a raise at his job, you find yourself deserving of a promotion. When your same friend starts dating someone steadily, You might wonder whether it is time to settle down and look for something more stable. Likewise, an idea shared on Twitter from someone you admire molds your thoughts, desires, and values. Luke Burgess has written a phenomenal book that takes a much deeper dive into Mimesis See Appendix B, but the focal point of this discussion is how the absence of self-reflection exacerbates the mimetic mechanism that causes you to outsource your decisions to the almighty algorithm. Your decision-making remains on autopilot, yet it is congruent with the life your content creators chose for you rather than by your design. Conscious delegation. If you remember the role of the gut, its primary function is to make sense of the scattered thoughts and desires of the heart and brain. If your gut gives up, it is your responsibility to decipher them. This can be an overwhelming process, so it might feel natural to enlist the help of others. Leaning on others is helpful, but while your friend, spouse, or therapist might mean well, they cannot possibly know what you think and desire deep down. They may have a grasp of your true thoughts and desires, but they are not you, so they can only speculate on the situation. If you aren't careful, two problems can arise when you enlist the help of others. One, if they inject their thoughts and desires on the matter, you may unconsciously accept their thoughts and desires as your own, similar to the previously described mimetic hijacking. Two, if instead of talking through your thoughts and desires with this person, you throw your decision on them. There is a fine line between working through your decisions with someone and giving your decisions to someone. This line can become quite gray because a simple conversation on the topic can profoundly influence your thoughts and desires. An example of delegating your leadership looks like this. You keep calling your friend to talk about a difficult decision ahead of you. You share your thoughts, but you keep saying, "I just don't know what to do." What do you think? Perhaps you don't feel you should be responsible for this decision, or maybe you look up to your friend and highly respect his opinion. Or it could be the more common culprit. You need external validation to make any big decisions. In the end, you choose whatever your friend suggests you do because you place their opinion on a pedestal above yours. Or even worse, you do the opposite of what they suggest because you identify with the rising contrarian culture. Independent decision-making and contrarianism is another distinction with a fine line. Some people realize the influence of cybernetics and mimesis, so their knee-jerk reaction is to reject every idea proposed by the news, social media, or mainstream culture. They become disagreeable curmudgeons that think they are the king's salmon because of their tendency to swim upstream. Of course, this belief is flawed because the natural behavior of a salmon fit for survival is to migrate with the seasons. They aren't mesmerized by a constant upstream swim. True leadership of your decisions means relying on your thoughts and desires rather than letting the mainstream govern them. Both mindless consumers and contrarians delegate their beliefs to the currents of the mainstream. Obviously, there is nothing wrong with listening to the advice of others, but problems arise when your decisions stem from their thoughts and desires, or the more veiled and well-intentioned problem, when your decisions stem from their interpretations of your thoughts and desires. Decisions that don't stem from your thoughts and desires are simply future regrets. Heart-brain dominance. The previous irresponsibilities with decisions involved the outsourcing of decisions to others, whether by direct or indirect influence. The final forms of self-sabotage stem from within. They are when the heart and brain attempt to lead themselves irrespective of the leadership of the gut or conscious effort. The heart and brain are highly opinionated, so there is little chance of a productive resolution without a mediator. Ignore your responsibility, and an abusive relationship can form. Depending on who you resonate with more, your boring accountant or your radical couch surfer, one tends to dominate the other in a manipulative manner. If your heart dominates your brain, you tend to make extremely rash decisions. You know they are rash, but you make up excuses to support obviously questionable decisions. There are a few different ways this can play out. The classic example of heart dominance is gambling addiction. The heart's overwhelming desire to take risks for the possibility of a better future leads to an overexposure to risk that inevitably ends in ruin. With gambling addiction, the reasonable part of you is completely shut down by the thrill of risk-taking. You ignore everything that doesn't give you the thrill you search for as you become engulfed in greed. Another example of heart dominance is rampant insecurity. In this situation, logic doesn't argue against irrational or risky behavior. Rather, logic becomes weaponized to support poor decisions. Instead of arguing against smashing your girlfriend's phone against the wall, your brain rationalizes that she should have known better. that you lash out in rage when she angers you. Your brain blames her and uses logic to support your emotionally charged destructive behavior instead of balancing against it. To clarify, all insecurity is not a sign of problematic heart dominance because insecurity is a normal response when a situation threatens your identity. Problems arise with heart dominance once insecurity drives you to behave in ways that hurt you and your loved ones. The heart's excessive dominance over the brain is temporarily sustainable, like some manipulative romantic relationships, because of the absence of conflict. Naturally, these situations inevitably end with explosive outcomes. Allowing your heart to continuously dominate your brain generally leaves you with fractured decisions and regret. Denying your brain denies your sense of stability. If you favor your brain, you might find yourself falling into a boring routine. Every time a risk presents itself, you deny it for the safe choice. Your life becomes dissatisfying because your heart yearns for a sense of adventure, while your brain squashes the heart's true desires by filling it with fears. Your heart is filled with pessimistic, what if questions until it submits to your brain that safety is the best path forward. In a word, brain dominance looks like paranoia. Follow this path to pay your bills and live comfortably, but when you're on your deathbed, all those opportunities for risk haunt you. Fear of rejection stopped you from trying out your business idea or asking someone on a date. Brain dominance keeps you from stretching yourself, leading to a life of mediocrity. Denying your heart denies your sense of meaning. An interesting pattern emerges among brain dominant and heart dominant risk profiles. If you place life satisfaction on the x-axis and the proportion of the population on the y-axis, you see a bell curve distribution with most people in the middle and less people on the ends. For ease of illustration, let's say wealth is a proxy for life satisfaction. Holding all other variables constant, it is reasonable to assume that access to more resources for yourself and your loved ones makes you happier. This is an inherently flawed premise since all other variables never remain constant, yet this mental model is a simple way to quantify life satisfaction, and in the generalist sense, it holds a grain of truth. Life tends to be better when you don't have to worry about your bills. In this model, the brain dominant rests in the center of the bell curve. He lives a mediocre but good life because he saved his money for what was most important to him by following Dave Ramsey's advice to pinch pennies wherever possible. The risk-averse plays not to lose and rarely suffers from poverty, yet seldom tastes the luxurious lifestyle beyond the upper middle class threshold. Unless, of course, this individual inherited wealth from a risk-taker. The heart dominant has one of two outcomes, on top or on bottom. Either their risk-taking pays off and they become ultra-affluent, or their risk-taking fails them and they join the ranks of the destitute. Perhaps both are addicted to gambling and riddled with greed. There are a multitude of variables that impact their likelihood of success, but let's call the sum of these variables randomness. In a random environment, some risk-takers are winners, others are losers, and the risk-averse sit firmly in the middle. Brain dominance leads to mediocrity, while heart dominance is a game of Russian roulette between the extremes. Our objective is to walk between the heart and brain's influence in such a way that positions us closer to the right side of the curve. If we enter situations where the gut's inexperience requires us to navigate the risks and rewards of a stressful decision, the natural instinct to shirk responsibility leads to unsatisfactory and unpredictable results through mimetic hijack or a manipulative relationship between the heart and brain. To direct ourselves towards the satisfactory right side of the curve, we must embrace the responsibility of balancing the wishes of the heart and brain every now and then.